Unless you've been living under a rock for the last few months, you've probably heard about all the hype behind Jujutsu Kaisen. I mean, it's a series I've followed for about a year now, and while it was the only one I read weekly alongside One Piece, which covering that's my full-time job, it wasn't something I necessarily wanted to go bug my friends to start reading or to start doing videos on or anything like that, at least until Gojo started fighting Sukuna. So now here I am, making more videos on basically a brand new channel, because this fight honestly has become one of my favorites of all time in any series, and I think Jujutsu Kaisen is poised for an insane rise in popularity because of it, as well as the success it's seeing in season 2 of the anime right now. With the growth of the anime and manga niche as a whole, JJK could seriously explode over the next year or two. So I called in my friend Zonin to help me break this down throughout the video, and we're also going to talk about some theories and predictions regarding the more recent chapters towards the end of the video as well. And make sure you subscribe for weekly chapter reviews as well. Now, while I've experienced a lot of the popular anime and manga that's out right now, the main one I've been attached to since about 2017 is One Piece, which I now cover for a living. But JJK has slowly but surely been creeping up there and grabbing my attention more and more every single week. I mean, I've always enjoyed reading it, whether it's the art style, the power system, the constant high stakes, whatever it is, but these last few chapters in particular kind of took all of that to a new level. Gojo vs Sukuna is quickly rising my ranks of all-time fights in any series because it's truly a battle of geniuses more than anything else. It's like a chess match, and this isn't the first time this has been done, of course, but the level to which Gege has been cooking deserves some respect. Both Gojo and Sukuna are very different sorcerers with very different ways of battling, but their technique and IQ have kind of kept them at a stalemate. Maybe one will get the upper hand for a moment, but then it flips right back over to the other side. The greatest sorcerer in history versus the greatest sorcerer of the present has definitely lived up to the hype so far. And I mean, everyone loves a good power-up or transformation in anime. Like, Goku going Super Saiyan is probably what got a lot of us into anime in the first place, but this battle of geniuses trying to get even the smallest upper hand on the other within this power system that Gege has created is just amazing. And when this fight finally gets animated, which I know is a couple years away at this point, but who knows what's going to happen to JJK's popularity when that happens. I mean, this series as a whole is already up there with a lot of the others, especially after the success of season 2 and the fight in the manga right now, but I think it's really poised for an almost meteoric rise over the next couple years. And I think an underrated aspect to that potential growth is just the sheer growth of the anime niche as a whole. I broke that down in more detail in this video about why One Piece is going to see a similar effect, but the growth of manga and anime is substantial right now, particularly in the West. And I think anime has had a bit of a stigma for a long time, but now it's becoming so much more commonplace. We even see athletes and celebrities sporting different anime on their uniforms or clothes, almost like it's becoming the cool thing to do. And if that's going to keep increasing the size of the pie, or just the market size of anime and manga as a whole, then Jujutsu Kaisen spiking at the right time could bode very well as it tries to claim more of that pie. And now this may not be on the same exact level, but when this fight gets animated, the hype could be a little bit like we've seen recently with One Piece episode 1071. No spoilers though.
I think it will undoubtedly be number 2. I think it already kind of is, of like the battle manga series at the moment, if we're counting One Piece as number 1, which I'm pretty sure it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it could potentially even become number 1 before it's over. That's just the biggest question, in my opinion, for Jujutsu Kaisen right now, because that really depends on everything else, like how long it's going to last. Because similar to how we're in the final saga in One Piece, we're definitely in the final saga of Jujutsu Kaisen. However, one series moves much faster than the other, and I'm thinking we have at least another year left with Jujutsu Kaisen, like from this point, meaning that it would probably end next summer. If it does, I mean, it could last longer than that, but I think it's, like minimum at least a year. And I think within that year, it can become number 1, like the way that Demon Slayer did back in 2020 and 2019.
Perfect comparison.
Yeah, I think it could do that for sure. I mean, it's on its way. And the manga right now is for sure peaking. Like, this is a huge built-up fight. I mean, it wasn't advertised. If you read between the lines, you knew it was going to happen for sure. But it's just 2 of the biggest names in the series, if not the 2 biggest names. And now it's like delivering. Like, it was supposed to deliver, and it is. So it's just compounding on the momentum as well that it's getting from season 2. So if it could replicate this for another year, I mean, because also Shibuya hasn't even aired yet. So I think all of that together, it for sure can reach like that Demon Slayer status. I mean, Demon Slayer did have the pandemic to assist it with that movie, but aside from that, like the crazy movie success, I think Jujutsu Kaisen can reach where it was a few years ago.
and JJK is no stranger to having movie success themselves. But obviously a huge part of the hype surrounding JJK right now is this fight with Gojo and Sukuna. So that's the next thing I want to dive into, because as someone who has been casually into Jujutsu Kaisen until more recently, this fight seems like the perfect embodiment of the somewhat complicated power system that Gege's put in place. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of it, but it's extremely easy to get lost in the rules and stipulations between different people's curse techniques and domains and things like that. While that certainly has its detriments, there are a lot of positives, and it's one of the things I actually enjoy most about the series. And this fight with Gojo and Sukuna is like the ultimate showcase of why those rules matter and how even a small slip up can cause major issues. I mean, it feels like they're almost rewriting the rulebook a little bit on how things work. I mean, even Okotsu, who's one of my favorite characters in the series, is shook like 3 times a chapter at this point. He and I pretty much look the same when I'm reading it. And maybe I'm just a sucker for Maharaga and the 10 Shadow technique in general, but the last couple chapters specifically have captured me more than probably any other chapters in the series. I mean, the fact we only have so many more turns of the wheel until the battle's over, neither Gojo nor Sukuna can access domain expansion now, we're seeing things be done that we didn't even think could be done, and all those other kind of elements just made for a perfect setup by Gege, in my opinion.
Like I was saying before, it was supposed to deliver. Like, it had a lot of hype just, you know, from the first chapter of us seeing that it was a possibility. And I really do think it is delivering. It's not perfect. It's not the best fight ever, but I think by the time it's done, it will probably be regarded as one of the best in like battle manga history, I guess, at this point, because like you were also saying, Jujutsu Kaisen can be complex and confusing sometimes. And I guess to, like, you know, somebody who just casually follows the manga, this would, I guess, you know, be somewhat confusing to them, especially because there's a bunch of new stuff that keeps happening, which I really like, because it's like, it's not, I don't think a retcon or just shoehorned in writing for this stuff to happen because it wasn't already established. I just think that the Jujutsu power scale, the system, it was established, and I think we just needed to see it be pushed far enough to get to this point, which we didn't. Like, this is easily the strongest fight, the 2 strongest characters that we know of fighting. So we're going to see some things that we haven't seen before. You know, like if you're like doing science experiments, you're going to be, you know, combining stuff and making things that haven't happened before because you didn't know it was possible unless you tried. So, you know, having like 5 back-to-back domain expansions. If we would have talked about this, you know, 6 months ago, we'd be like, no, that's not possible. But now that they've proved that it is possible, we're like, oh wow, okay, I guess it's a thing. But other than that, I just think, yeah, it is a great fight. So that's also another reason why the fight's so good. There's like that dichotomy between how they're, you know, 2 different type of geniuses, which I mean, I like seeing that in real life fights too, or just any kind of sports where it's, you know, there's like the one that's like really aggressive and the one that's just, you know, sits back, kind of like a sword versus like a shield.
Yes, in a way. And that's especially true considering the backdrop of Sukuna being in Megumi's body, which then makes this matchup like a redo of the Zenin and Gojo clan rivalry, but not as straightforward, obviously. I mean, Sukuna's been taking Megumi's 10 Shadow technique to a totally different level, and while no sorcerer has ever been able to control the Maharaga, Sukuna would kind of makes sense as the one to do it eventually, I think. You know, my main thing over in One Piece land has always been theorizing, and I do have at least one that I'm going to share later in this video, but I feel like I need to soak in the series a little bit more before dropping too many of those, because Gege has like a million tricks up his sleeve, it feels like. I mean, Gojo and Sukuna aren't even the protagonists, nor necessarily the primary villain. That should be Yuji and Kenjaku if we're talking about the broader story context, and Gojo and Sukuna weren't even that active until just a few chapters before their fight. It's like everything in the story was kind of put on hold just to see the goats go at it. And what Gege is cooking with Yuji specifically is actually something I want to do an entire video on eventually, because I feel like that's something kind of rare in manga. Now, Yuji's definitely had his moments, but Gojo and some of the other characters in the story do take a lot of the shine. And without Sukuna in Yuji's body anymore, it's definitely a fair question to wonder what's going to happen with Yuji going forward that'll make him stand out as the MC that he is.
With other series, I usually have like a rough idea of what I think is going to happen, but with this, I don't really know. Like, I'm really in the dark. Like, I'm pretty sure that Sukuna is going to defeat Gojo, or something's going to happen as to where Gojo either loses his curse technique or he dies. I think either is going to happen, and Sukuna has to become full power. Like, he has to have 20 fingers in him. He has to have the 4-armed form. We need to get Sukuna's backstory, and Kenjaku's backstory. And I think we need to go into the Heian era for a little bit. So all of those things need to happen. Also, the remaining cast here need opponents. Like, I think it would be pretty anticlimactic if they just sit around like the Z Fighters during like the Cell games or whatever, and they just watch and they never do anything. I don't think Gege is going to do that. So there needs to be more opponents actually that come out, because they're lacking on that. Like, I think Kenjaku might release some cursed spirits or something that he's been holding, maybe, or maybe he has the other vengeful cursed spirits. Michizane Sugiwara, he's been mentioned before, or I don't know. But as for Yuji, I really don't know. I mean, he does have some kind of hidden power up that he's had. The last time that he fought Sukuna, as soon as he got into Megumi's body, he was like, considering how powerful he is going against Gojo, he was doing pretty well. Or, I mean, at least he wasn't getting completely destroyed. So I think that's going to expand his whatever power set that he currently has, on top of what we saw him do a couple chapters ago with Kusakabe, where it's implied that he can like switch bodies, right? Yeah, so that is going to play into, I guess, how he takes down Sukuna, along with finding out more about the soul, which obviously has to come into play. Aside from just whatever happens in the end game, it's Yuji figuring out more about the soul, adapting his ability to swap bodies, and then I also think he is going to get Sukuna's curse technique, because Gojo said in the beginning of the series that his body would eventually learn Sukuna's curse technique, and I don't think it's going to be like cleave and dismantle. There's probably going to be like a twist, and it's going to be a shrine, like the Malevolent Shrine. I think that's the popular community name for it. Like, Sukuna's curse technique is probably just called Shrine, and it has to do with the black box that we see in the dialogue when he was going against Jogo before he used the flame arrow thing. So I think Yuji's going to have that ability, and it seems like it's just the ability to, I don't know, hold other curse techniques somehow. Like, it's similar to Akotsu's. I also think there's probably like a parallel there between Akotsu and Sukuna.
But now I do want to talk the specifics of some of the recent chapters, and something that really stood out to me in chapter 231 was Gojo using the shadow clone technique. I haven't heard this mentioned anywhere else, so if this is common knowledge, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure he's copying that power from the cloning curse user that was trying to get Riko. And that could be a sign that Gojo's starting to learn how to copy other people's powers, and it could open the door to new abilities going forward against Sukuna. Now, Sukuna was able to hit the real Gojo right away when he used that clone ability, but I think that's also an important hint that Gojo can't mimic those powers perfectly, because the cloning curse user was able to swap out his body at any time with a different clone. If Gojo could do that, then he would have. Maybe Gojo ends up using that power a second time later on, but he does swap to another clone, and that helps him get the win since Sukuna wouldn't be expecting it. I mean, the battle right now is kind of based around Mahoraga and the adaptation to Limitless, so if Gojo can start sprinkling in different techniques on the fly, then maybe that's what helps him win the fight.
That's a great theory. I didn't even think about that. I didn't really put too much thought into this because I just have no idea what he's doing here. Like, the Jujutsu Kaisen power system is, it's not black and white, but it's not as gray as other systems where, like Hunter x Hunter, for example, you can pretty much do almost anything, with Nen. But with Jujutsu Kaisen, you can't just, clone yourself like this unless it's like your inherent technique, and obviously we know that's not Gojo's inherent technique. So I was just like, okay, I don't know what's going on here, and Gege's not explaining it, so I just accept that he can just clone himself now. But that is a great theory, because it is the only other case of us seeing somebody clone themselves in the series, right? It was a Baghead guy, and it happened against Gojo, and Gojo was analyzing it. And it's like, okay, so does that mean that wasn't Baghead Guy's innate technique? Which I assume it was. But how is Gojo able to copy it? Is he kind of just, I don't know, somehow using Limitless to duplicate the ability.
I know it's definitely kind of a hard thing to imagine, but I mean, if Maharaga is built upon adapting to other attacks, being defensive in a kind of way, then it does kind of make sense to me, at least thematically, for Gojo to have an offensive version of that almost. I mean, if there was anyone in the series who could copy curse techniques on the fly, it would probably be Gojo. Because like we said earlier, there is a really important layer here to the fact that it's the Gojo clan versus the Zenin clan, and Maharaga is like the crown jewel of the Ten Shadows technique, so finding out that the Gojo clan had a secret counter would kind of make sense story-wise. I mean, in the anime, we just saw Toji lose to Purple because it was a technique not many people knew about, so maybe there are other techniques that the 6-Eye user has that almost nobody knows about, and that's how Maharaga ends up being countered in a way. I mean, it would be kind of fitting for Maharaga to be adapted to, since that's kind of its calling card, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose this is all for the sake of Maharaga at this point. They're kind of, or at least Gojo's kind of tiptoeing around at this point, not trying to do too much because, as he says, you know, there's only 3 more things he needs to do before Maharaga is completely adapted, which I think is probably a lie, considering that he's saying that. But as for this shadow clone stuff, I mean, it is possible. I mean, the foundation is there. He has the 6 eyes. He can see how curse techniques work. I think it says that in the data book or something like that. So, but as for him, like, being able to do it, like, I don't think it's a 1-for-1. Unless he can somehow see how it's done and then alter his brain, because, you know, they've been talking about brains a lot. I mean, we always knew that, at least from Shoko, that the curse techniques are tied to the brain. And as the series goes on more and more, especially lately, it like damages or imprints on a part of your brain, and other techniques and other areas of Jujutsu are on other areas of the brain. So I don't know, is he doing something with that to be able to do this, or is he simply just manipulating Limitless?
And I think that would probably be it. Like, Limitless has some more layers to it than we've thought so far or something, because throughout the fight, even though it's been roughly even, I feel like Gojo has been getting better at things he already knew as opposed to unlocking a new ability outright. Like against Toji, he got defeated and learned a reverse curse technique, but here he's kind of just getting better at using that as well as some other things, other than this new shadow clone power, obviously. But unlike that fight with Toji, I feel like the outcome of this one is not going to be super straightforward. I mean, maybe there is a clear winner and loser, but either one dying outright seems hard to believe simply because they were both reintroduced so recently. I mean, Gojo was locked away in the prison realm or whatever, obviously, and we've been kind of waiting for Sukuna to come out and fight for real all series. But he doesn't even have all of his 20 fingers yet, so I definitely can't see him dying, and if Gojo dies, that would just tell me we have to be very close to the end because he literally just got back and he's obviously a fan favorite. Not that Gege is shy about killing people, of course, but to me, I feel like some kind of stalemate or mutual nerf of some kind, or maybe a third party getting involved or something like that is more likely than straight up one killing the other, I think.
So, I mean, it would be cool if Gojo survives. I don't want him to die. I mean, it's either he dies or loses his curse technique or gets nerfed, something like that. But the main reason I think that he's going to die is because he talks to Megumi early on in the series about how 400 years ago the head of the Gojo clan fought the head of the Zenin clan, and they both had the 6 eyes, Limitless, and 10 shadows, and they both wound up killing each other. And I think that that's foreshadowing. I mean, that I already just assumed that was going to be foreshadowing that Megumi was going to fight Gojo at some point, and now that's come to fruition. So I think that the other part is too. I don't think Megumi's going to die. Pretty sure he's going to survive because he kind of has to. But I do think that means that probably Gojo is going to die, either sacrificing himself or he just straight up gets killed cleanly by Sukuna. And yeah, I know it's like weird because yeah, Gojo was captured, was in the prison realm for so long, and now he's just come back just to die. And I could see Gege doing that. No character is pretty much safe in this series. Like, they will die. Like, I think Nobara is dead. Like, I don't think she's coming back. So it's like I could see him doing that with Gojo. Like, it would be, I think, a fantastic way to capitalize on this hype. Like, it's the most popular it's ever been right now, at least in the manga. And to have the ending of this being Gojo dies, I think would just, yeah, people would be upset, but I think it would have like that polarity to it to where it could just take it to the next level. And then that would be a good point to where everybody goes away for a little bit, you know, because you need to have like a breather. We've had 9 chapters of like this crazy battle. We need like to have a couple breather chapters. So like after that, I think, you know, hypothetically Gojo dying would be at that point, and then that's when Sukuna becomes full power. And yeah, so that's just why I think Gojo dying, it would just ultimately be iconic, but he doesn't have to. I'm totally open for the option of him surviving and then coming back at a later point. That would be cool too.
I know I definitely don't want Gojo to die, but there's no doubt it would be iconic and probably help bolster JJK's popularity like we've been discussing throughout the video. However Gege decides to end it though, I'm sure he's going to find a way to make it work. But hey, that's it for this video guys. Please make sure to drop a like and subscribe for future JJK reviews and theories and stuff like that. But until next time, later.